A while back, I got an email from a retired Army major who was just thrilled at the success he's had in overcoming diabetes. Let me read you a part of that email. He said, "I've lost 70 pounds. I feel like I'm in the best health of my life. All my blood work, including cholesterol, came back as normal. I've also attached my last A1c. I had a chuckle when I read they had to check it twice at the lab because it went down so much so quickly." How did he do that? Well, folks, we are blessed to have a young man. I call him a young man. He's in his 40s, named Preston Rutherford, who is here to share his story, and it is an exciting story. Preston, welcome to Beat Diabetes.
Thanks, Dennis. It's great to be here.
Well, tell us where you're coming from. Where do you live? And I understand you have been in the Army. You're retired. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I live in just outside of Seattle, Washington. As you said, I was in the military for 20 years in the Army and retired after 20 years, and then moved here to Seattle, and now I'm working as a program manager for a technology company.
Well, that sounds good. You told me that by the time you retired, you were a major. So should I refer to you as Major Rutherford?
Preston's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Well, obviously, we are here to talk about diabetes, and you have had a struggle with it, but it goes beyond you. It goes to your parents and grandparents. Tell us a little bit about their struggles first, and then we'll talk about your own.
Yeah. As long as I can remember, diabetes has been in my family. On my mother's side, my grandmother had it, and on my father's side, both my grandmother and my grandfather were diabetics. And then my father and mother are both diabetics as well. So it's definitely prevalent in my family.
Yeah. Did that affect your thinking? Did you consider, hey, I may get it as well, or did you just try to pretend like it would never happen to you?
Yeah, it wasn't something that I thought about a lot, especially when I was younger. I was in the military. I was staying pretty physically fit. There was no real symptoms or issues. But as I got in my 40s, age starts to catch up with you a little. In my annual physicals, they started to tell me, the doctor, your resting, your glucose is getting a little higher. It would be around 114, 115 fasted, which, didn't seem horrible to me, but it was definitely a warning sign, that I probably should have heeded more than I did. But it wasn't out of control. Again, I was physically active, and things seemed to be okay. I felt okay.
So as you reached a certain point, not all that long ago, you started having all kinds of symptoms and issues that concerned you. Tell us a little bit about the symptoms you experienced as diabetes really got hold of your body.
Yeah, backing up. I'd gotten my last physical after I'd just gotten out of the military in 2020. Everything looked okay. I had a relatively low AOC, 5.4, 5.3 actually, and my glucose was elevated, so I didn't really pay it too much attention. But then that was right before the pandemic hit. And, I was resident to go back into the doctor's office at the time, at the height of the pandemic. But, so I let it go. I didn't go back in for a good 18 months. But kind of what forced me in was, I started all of a sudden, to me, it felt all of a sudden, I really just started getting kind of all the basic symptoms all at once. It kind of just broke like a dam, really. It was, I started getting the dry cotton mouth, having to go to the bathroom, multiple times per day. I would actually have to carry a water bottle in my car, even just driving locally around because I would be so thirsty. I started getting blurry vision, especially in the mornings. It would take me a while where I was hard to see. It was pretty blurry. And then, I started getting tingling in my arms, neuropathy, I think, a little neuropathy in my hands and feet. So it was a little of everything. It all started really quickly. So that's when I knew I needed to go in and get checked out.
Did you put that together as being possible diabetes, or you just didn't have a clue what it might be?
Yeah, initially not, but as the symptoms, I started getting more. I kind of went to Google MD, so to speak, and kind of Googled the symptoms that I was having, and it came back. Number one was potentially diabetes. So it was definitely in my mind, and that's why I was hard to believe because 18 months earlier, I had a relatively low AOC and everything seemed okay. But I did know, like we talked earlier, it was in my family. So I knew it could be an issue. So that definitely gave me a hint. And I definitely went, scheduled an appointment with the doctor right away.
So the doctor gave you an A1c and then probably took your glucose as well right then to see what it was currently. Is that right?
That's right. It was, I went in, she did kind of the basic physical, but then she referred me to a lab. So I went to the lab, and drew blood for, A1c and glucose. And then so really it was the next day after I had seen the doctor that the results popped up in my medical phone app. I was just blown away when I saw the numbers. You get the little exclamation point next to the test, and that's never good. So I went in and my A1c was, 10.4. And my resting glucose was 297. And like I said, I was floored.
Yeah, we're not talking about a slight case of high sugar or just a moderate case of diabetes. We're talking about severe stuff. Did you know how bad that was? Did you immediately, you say you're floored. I'm assuming you knew those numbers were not good at all.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's a good point. I really did have it in my head so much. But on the app, it gives you a little range, right? Where there's a range for green and then there's outside. And usually even when I'm close, you're pretty close zoomed in on the green. But when it came to glucose and A1c, it was zoomed way out and my reading was way off to the right. So it just kind of showed you visually like you're way out of range.
The thing that really amazes me is, like you say, 18 months ago, you were at 5.3, 5.4 for an A1c. And you had, your glucose was normally, fasting glucose was maybe 110, which is not diabetic. It's not great, but it's not diabetic. So in a period of 18 months, you went from being, not even pre-diabetic according to your A1c, and suddenly you are incredibly diabetic, severely diabetic in a year and a half's time. It's amazing how fast diabetes can go from non-existent to a big monster on your back.
I think of it as I had a crutch. It was in my family. It was waiting for me. But my crutch was I was in the military. I was staying active. It kind of forced me to keep your weight under control. Stay physically active, and I think that was holding me up. But when I got out, admittedly, I kind of let some of that go. I quit exercising. I just kind of caution to the wind, just kind of let a couple years, I wanted to just kind of rest after getting out of the military, but that was a mistake, obviously.
Yeah, tell us about your diet. What was your diet like in those days before becoming getting the diagnosis of being diabetic?
Yeah, I'd like to think it was, maybe for somebody that doesn't have a diabetic, a severe background, maybe I would like to think it was okay. I didn't drink a lot of soda or sweets or, a lot of sugar, things like that. But I did eat out a lot. Carbs, were, prevalent in my life. I would, pasta, just all the, Mexican food, just anything eating out. And I just didn't really pay any attention to the macros, what helped fat, carbs, and protein. I was just kind of eating what I felt like.
Well, you, along with most other Americans for sure, now you find out that you have severe diabetes. You're scared. You're starting to remember issues that were your parents experienced and your grandparents, and that no doubt scared you some more. What was your response? What did you do? And what was your emotional state at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I was in shock initially. The day I found out, I immediately called my doctor's office to get a hold of my doctor. And and just wanted to find out what to do about it. But, and she's a great doctor and very helpful. It's just, no doctor really has the time to sit down and for a few hours to just talk you through, what's happening. She gave me some good advice, as in, you're going to need to, adjust your diet. You're going to need to, get exercise back on, in your daily routine. After that, I mean, I knew I needed to start my own research and I'm a program manager, so I needed to develop my own program, to fight this.
So how did that go? What were your first steps? Did you have conflicting information where you had to decide one way or the other, or did you come to a conclusion pretty quickly as you did some research?
Yeah, the first YouTube was actually kind of where I went first, because whenever I want to look something up, YouTube is, I usually watch a YouTube video on it. I searched, cure diabetes, I think it is my first search on YouTube. And the first thing that actually came up was a TED Talk by Sarah Hallberg, Dr. Sarah Hallberg.
Well, I know that very well. Tell us about how that affected you.
It was for me. It was eye opening, because because I didn't really, I had never put it together that carbs were the problem. Sugar is a problem, but I didn't know. You don't really understand that sugar is carbs and carbs is sugar. And the biggest thing that stood out to me when I watched her TED Talk, I mean, it was great all through, but she put up a chart that showed how the different macros affect your blood sugar. So carbs was a Mount Everest spike. Proteins were a little less, quite a bit less, but a spike, and then it showed fats that basically just a slight rise over, and then back down. And when I saw that, I knew, I was like, carbs have to leave my diet right now. And so without really even knowing that, ketogenic or low carb diet, I just knew that I needed to stop eating carbohydrates, at least for a time. And so that was my goal, just finding foods that had no carbs and just kind of learning what that meant.
So you watch one video from of Dr. Sarah Hallberg talking about that, and you immediately decide, I am going this direction. Yeah.
I mean, that chart just spoke to me. It made it to me as somebody that likes to manage, look at the data. That just seemed like at least a good place to start in an emergency. But I did go out and I was looking at other videos. I started listening to Dr. Sten Ekberg, and he was really helpful in kind of breaking down the parts of diabetes and insulin resistance, so I learned a lot from him on the science side of it, I think. And then Jason Fung kind of got me into the intermittent fasting idea, and then ran into you, of course, at Beat Diabetes, and really, like I said, I saw you as just a motivation. I watched a lot of your interviews with others that had really turned it around, and that gave me a lot of hope, and it kind of gave me at least confidence that in the short run, this was the right diet for me to try to get it under control.
So you adopted very quickly an approach, a set of behaviors, a dietary pattern, exercise pattern, eating pattern. I want you to break it down for us. Give us specifically the changes you made to attack this diabetes and get things under control.
Yeah. So like you said, I kind of developed a program. There's 5 pillars, I guess, to my program, individual program. So the first is diet, of course. I think that's the most important. So I didn't really go into it for a keto diet. Kind of like you've said before, low carb was kind of my goal. But really it turned into keto. I was well under 30 grams. I mean, I really kept it down, especially initially for the first few months. Basically cut carbs out, for all intents and purposes, out of my diet for a short period. And that really lowered everything. The second, was intermittent fasting, the second pillar. I initially started with a kind of a 16-hour fast, which eventually developed into a 1 meal a day. And that really, my thinking behind that, and just from the information I had, is the goal is to really, you have your meal, you get your, with no carbs. So it's not a spike. It's a general little lump. Your glucose goes up, and then I don't, 23 more hours, I don't really have any meal. And so it slowly goes down, from the 90s, 80s, to the low 80s. And then by the end of, by the time it's for my meal again, I'm in the low 80s, and I eat again, and then it goes up, but under 100. I saw in a movie once a quote, aim small, miss small. And the way I took that is my goal was to keep under 100, my glucose, at least for a period of time. My goal was 3 months, because that's when I was going to go back in for my A1c again.
Now, were you taking metformin at this time?
I was taking metformin, 2 in the morning, and 2 in the evening. And I think that's actually one of my pillars. The 5th pillar is metformin, just because it's a force multiplier for me, in that it's not going to solve the problem. I don't see it as a solution, but if you're doing the other things right, I think it can help, make the results happen faster. And
yeah, we're on the 3rd pillar, and you haven't given us the 3rd and the 4th yet.
Yeah. Exercise was my 3rd pillar. So I just kept it easy. I just made it a goal to walk in the morning, 1 hour, every morning, just go out for a walk. Rain, shine, just get that exercise in. And then the last was, bike the meter, as you know. that's an important pillar for me. I think 2 reasons really. One, is that it just gives you the data of what you're eating and is it affecting you. But 2, I think testing regularly holds you accountable, to make sure your goal is to eat to keep that level low. The motivation was just as throughout the day. So I would test, of course, when I woke up in the morning, and get my initial, and usually that was, over time, it took me about 2 or 3 weeks to drop it, to actually get my resting under 100. But then, kind of sit in the high 90s. And then I would test, I would have what you would call a keto coffee or bullet coffee. And so just to kind of help me get through the day, especially initially. So I would test after that just to make sure that wasn't having an effect. And I would test around lunchtime, and then I would test maybe late afternoon, and then test right before I would eat my dinner, and then right after. And really, the other reason I tested a lot was I was on metformin, so I did want to make sure I wasn't in any danger of a hypo going too low.
Did you ever drop very low?
Usually, the lowest I would get was sometimes I would get in the low 70s, but I didn't feel like that was a huge issue, but I did want to make sure I didn't drop below 70.
So you do this and you can see pretty quickly that it seems to work. And throughout this process, you're losing a lot of weight, aren't you?
Yeah, I lost a lot of weight. I at my heaviest, I was 265. And within 3.5 months, when I weighed in at my last doctor's visit, I was at 195. So it was about 70 pounds, significant weight loss.
Significant weight loss for sure. And so you're basically, you're using what I call a reasonable and proper aggression toward diabetes. You're not just attacking it on one front. You're hitting it from 5 different sides. And you find out at the next doctor's appointment, about 3.5 months after you find out you were diabetic with a 10.4 A1c, what do you find out the next time you go to the doctor? What's your A1c, and what kind of fasting glucoses are you experiencing?
Yeah, I knew I had gone down a lot just because Mike the meter was telling me I was averaging low. Again, I was under 100. For a good 3 months. Once I'd gotten it under 100, I really never went over 100, even after eating for that 3-month. I call it, the really strict period I was in. But yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised when I got the blood work back. I'd gone from a 10.4 to a 4.8.
That is amazing. You didn't even make the 5s club. You went better than that and got into the 4s club somehow. I imagine those the medical people that knew your situation were pretty amazed.
Yeah, I got to admit, my doctor was pretty floored when I went over the results with her. First thing was like, "What did you do?" and I just kind of I just ran through the pillars with her. I just did these things, diet, exercise, fasting, testing, and the metformin. Thanks for the prescription. But yeah, she was I don't know what she thought about the low carb piece. I was wondering what she would think about it, but really she didn't say much about the diet piece. But that was, I think that was the main part, and I did tell her that. I think low carb, at least to get it down initially, is critical.
Well, you certainly did that. 4.8. That's just about perfect. So tell us, Preston. You're looking at the future. Now, what you've described, for most of us, we would say that's kind of phase 1 behavior. That's the attack on every front. Do you plan to ease up at all, or do you just plan to just continue on the way you're going? For example, with OMAD, any easing up on that, or do you have any ideas about any changes, or are you just going to stay the course?
Yeah, no, I was definitely thinking after I've gotten my score, because I also had my actual resting insulin taken, and it was 4.2, which is very low. So I think I feel like I'm more sensitive now to insulin, which is good. But again, not letting up. I think the goal going forward is to find balance and find what can I do long term. I think I feel like what I'm doing now is not, I think I can keep going, but the goal is to slowly and methodically, using Mike the Meter, incorporate new foods. Like on your show, chaffles. I've been looking at those. Just slowly bringing in items to just expand the diet a little bit. Definitely want to eat. I eat lots of salad, lots of low glycemic vegetables, and berries. And I'm trying to, berries were out for the first 3 months, but they're slowly coming back in, mixed with plain yogurt. Trying to just right size it for long. But I think for me, it's important to keep it simple. I think for generally, it's going to be a pretty, I want to have have some of the different food groups, a healthy diet, a balanced diet, but I'm not going to go too far off my current regimen, at least not in the foreseeable future.
My philosophy has always been, I will sacrifice what I have to sacrifice, give up what I have to give up to get my A1c down and to get my blood sugar at a good range. But I'm not really such a martyr that I want to sacrifice things I don't have to sacrifice. So you're talking about berries and some salads. So you're not really talking about zero carbs anymore. You're talking about eating low carb.
Yeah, and the way you talked about it really helped. And watching you and Benedicta test the different things, I think that really helps. Just bring it around that keto is great. I think it has its place. For me, it had its place in getting my sugars where they needed to be. Like you said, almost optimal. But now it's time. I'm doing it very slowly, but kind of bringing back in what I can. But like you said, if it's going to cause a problem, I'm not going to do it because I'm not getting any younger, and I'm sure I don't feel like I'm cured. I just feel like I've put it into remission, and I want to keep it there.